I wish I would have noticed it before the purchase. Moving into this old Victorian was supposed to be a fresh start. It had charm, arched windows, intricate woodwork, and more space than I could ever need. But beneath its outward elegance was a sense of heaviness, a cold feeling that lingered in certain parts of the house like the touch of unseen fingers. On the first night, I dismissed the creaks and the groans as the natural sound of an aging structure. By the second night, I began to notice patterns in the sound. They weren't random, they were deliberate, as if the house was breathing, its timbers expanding and contracting with a life of its own. By the third night, I started being able to tell the sounds apart, and one of them sounded like a faint, rhythmic thump, steady and persistent like a metronome keeping time. I told myself it was the pipes or the wind, though neither explanation felt right. On the fourth night, I couldn't ignore it any longer. The noise wasn't just coming from the walls, it was inside them, coursing through the house like a pulse, like a heartbeat. Lying in bed, I strained to locate the source. It was always faint but maddeningly present, the kind of sound that buries into your skull and refuses to let go. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, this sound seemed to grow louder, dragging me into the edge of madness. That night, I decided to find it. I armed myself with a crowbar and a flashlight. Though I wasn't sure what I was expecting to face, the air in the hallway felt colder than usual as I made myself to the basement door. The basement had always felt wrong. I'd only been down there once or twice to check on a circuit breaker, and even then I hadn't lingered. Something about this space, its oppressive darkness, the smell of damp earth had made my skin crawl. But now, standing at the top of the stairs, I felt an overwhelming pull, like something wanted me down there. The flashlight cast a narrow beam of light as I descended, each creaking step amplifying the pounding sound. The air grew heavier, more suffocating with each step. The basement walls were lined with stone, their surface slick with condensation. The smell of mildew was overpowering. At first, nothing seemed out of place. Rusty tools hanging from pegs on the walls and stacks of rotting cardboard boxes leaned precariously in the corner of the room. But as I stepped further in, the noise grew louder. It was coming from underneath the floor. The old wooden planks looked ordinary enough, though they felt wrong underfoot, almost soft. The rhythm of the sound seemed to vibrate through the soles of my shoes. I crouched down, running my hands over the planks. They were warped with age, and once had a faint gap where the edges didn't quite meet. My hands shook as I wedged the crowbar into the crack. The first floorboard came loose with a groan, revealing a layer of damp earth underneath. The sound intensified. I pulled up another plank, and another. My movements became frantic as the noise pounded in my ears. By the time I removed the last board, my breath was coming in ragged gasps. Beneath the floor was a bundle, underneath just like an inch of dirt. It was wrapped in a fabric so old it seemed more like a shroud than a cloth. Its edges fused to the dirt. Flashlight flickered as I stared, the weak beam dancing over the bundle, and it moved. I recoiled, dropping the flashlight. It spun across the floor, casting erratic shadows that made my room seem alive. My heart hammered as I forced myself to crouch again, my fingers trembling as they brushed the edge of the fabric. The cloth was damp and cold, and it clung to my fingers as I peeled it away. Beneath it lay something that defied explanation. It was small, no larger than an infant, with translucent skin stretched tightly over delicate bones. Veins pulsed beneath the surface, faint and sluggish, matching the sound that I'd been hearing. Its arms and legs twitched weakly, like a dying insect's. It had no mouth, only a smooth ridge where one should have been. It was hairless and earless. Its milky, lidless eyes rolled aimlessly, unfocused yet somehow aware. It made no sound, but I could hear it in my mind, a low, mournful wail that seemed to rise from the deepest corners of my brain. The longer I stared, the louder it became, filling my head with an unbearable keening. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat.
"What are you?"
I whispered, though I didn't expect an answer. But I got one. Images began flooding my mind, vivid and searing. A mother giving birth to her first child. She's wearing a necklace with a crucifix pendant. A father standing by waiting to meet his son. He looks so proud and happy. He wears a pendant of a moon and a star encircled. A mob of villagers kicking in their door at their happiest moment. 2 tall wooden stakes where the mother and father are tied up. There's wood and kindling all around them, and they're wet with something shimmery and color changing. The father is yelling out a final defiant word as the priests light the flame. The oil on their bodies immediately caught aflame. The priest is holding the baby. This I can hear as the priest throws oil over the newborn while whispering to himself. May God have mercy on our souls, before throwing the newborn into the flames. The pyre is smoking, plumes of smoke rising from a pile of ashes, but the village moves on, uncaring of what they've done to the young family. A shift in the ashes, flames erupt and many winged creatures poured out the radius of the burn mark on the ground. The village consumed by flames, its people screaming as they were dragged into the inferno by the hunched winged creatures. A priest, his face twisted with grief, clutched the creature he just pulled from the pile of ashes. He wrapped it in a holy shroud and buried it beneath the church floor, hollowed ground where the winged creatures couldn't step. It couldn't die. It was a curse, a blight, sealed away to stop its hunger. But it wasn't enough, not forever. The visions ended as abruptly as they began, leaving me gasping on the cold basement floor. The creature twitched again, its bony fingers flexing weakly. I scrambled back, my foot hitting the flashlight. Its beam landed on the creature, casting its shadow onto the far wall. The shadow didn't match the creature's form. It was massive, monstrous, with jagged claws, a contorted body, giant leathery wings, and curling horns that seemed to writhe against the stone. Then I saw the body. Had it always been there? It was crumpled on the far corner, a desiccated husk that might once have been human. The skin was pulled taut over its bones, lips drawn back in a silent scream. It looked mummified, completely drained of moisture and life. I staggered back, horror flooding my veins. My hands shook as I lifted them to the light. They were streaked with blood, but not fresh blood. It was dark, as though I had pulled it from the body in the corner. Panic overtook me and I ran, leaving the flashlight and the crowbar behind, not stopping until I was outside, gasping in the cool night air. I looked down at my hands again and the blood was gone. My hands were completely clean. Still, I drove myself to a motel about an hour away, desperate to put distance between myself and this house. That night, I barely slept. The sound had followed me. The heartbeat was everywhere, in the walls, the floors, even the very air. When I finally drifted off, my dreams were plagued by the images I'd seen. The burning village, the priest, and the creature's shadow growing larger, darker with each passing moment. When I awoke, I told myself it wasn't real, that I was overtired, stressed from the move. But I knew better. I knew better. I went back the next day, calling a local priest on the way. He agreed to come to the house this afternoon, though his voice carried a note of hesitation when I described what I'd found. When I stepped inside, the house felt darker, heavier, as though the walls themselves were closing in. I tried boarding up the basement, thinking it would help. It didn't. The heartbeat grew louder and more insistent, and I began to lose time. When it first happened, I woke up in the basement. I didn't remember going down there. Yet there I was, standing over the exposed pit with dirt under my nails and blood on my hands. The creature was still there, but it had changed. Its skin had darkened, a faint shimmer of red pulsing beneath the surface. At the corner of the room was a body. It was crumpled at the far corner, a desiccated husk that might once have been human. The skin was pulled taut over the bones, lip drawn back in a silent scream. It looked mummified, completely drained of the moisture and life. The body was wearing black church robes and vestments. It was the priest, the one that was supposed to come out here and check the situation out and help me. I screamed, stumbling back. The creature didn't move, but its shadow loomed over me, monstrous and oppressive. "Just one more, just one more," a voice whispered in my mind. I don't know how much longer I can resist. The voice is louder now, whispering to me even when I'm awake. I've been losing whole parts of my day lately. The police came looking for the priest the next day. They're now resting at the corner of the basement next to the priest, dried out and mummified, just like the priest. God help me. I think I'm the one it's feeding on. Or maybe I'm the one feeding it. It's getting much bigger lately.